Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Dragon Prince Yuan Season 2 episode number 18 based on novel. So let's start. Zhu Yuan frowned deeply as he gazed upon the Wu Huang, who was now substantially bigger and covered in dragon scales. The latter was currently giving off an extremely frightening aura. Wu Huang's lifted his face and gave Zhu Yuan a savage smile. His foot slammed into the ground, cracking it as his figure rocketed forward. How quick! Zhu Yuan's pupils shrank. The ancient saint rune appeared within it, allowing him to clearly see Wu Huang's body. However, Zhu Yuan's body was unable to respond in time. Mighty tortoise armor rune! Yelled Zhu Yuan as a tortoise shell-like glowing rune appeared in front of him. However, it was shattered by a single punch almost immediately after it appeared. Wild punch winds blasted into Zhu Yuan's magical python scale-covered arms. Thump! Zhu Yuan's body jerked back, before being sent flying backwards. Most of the scales on his arms had shattered and broken, making them a bloody mess. Wu Huang did not give Zhu Yuan any chance to breathe, a storm of attacks immediately following. The ancient saint rune in Zhu Yuan's pupils spun round and round. He could still see the vulnerabilities in Wu Huang's attacks, but when his attacks landed on them, they were unable to break through. As such, he was naturally unable to achieve the same effect as before. Crap, his Genesis Chi has grown stronger, and my attacks are no longer able to affect him, not even at the weakest points of his attacks. Zhu Yuan's expression had turned rather ugly. He could see the vulnerabilities, but he did not have enough force to make use of them. Two figures continued to clash on the White Jade Plaza. This time, however, the situation was reversed. Wu Huang laughed madly, his attacks like a torrential downpour, while Zhu Yuan continuously retreated. Wu Huang's attacks would pierce his defenses from time to time and land on his body, causing blood to appear from the corner of Zhu Yuan's mouth. Ha ha, Zhu Yuan, weren't you very pleased with yourself earlier? You are indeed a formidable foe to have forced out even my final trump card. However, it is time for you to pay the price for doing so. And that price will be your life. Wu Huang's eyes were scarlet red, his face twisted with violence as his attacks grew increasingly vicious. Genesis Chi pulsed in the air as a flurry of fists descended, bombarding Zhu Yuan to no end. Boom! Genesis Chi exploded as Zhu Yuan's feet slid across the ground. His body was blown over 100 steps back, the blood at the corner of his mouth growing increasingly apparent. Every single inch of his body was radiating an intense pain. How stubborn! Wu Huang looked down from above, a certain eeriness emanating from the corners of his lips as he said, I really want to find out if you will still be able to stand after I break every bone in your body. His hands slowly came together, as he suddenly inhaled deeply. Berserk Genesis Chi flooded in through his nose, his chest swelling as an alarming Genesis Chi ripple frantically converged. The ground below Wu Huang's feet began to crumble, unable to support the brewing power. Wu Huang indifferently stared at Zhu Yuan. A split second later, the former's chest shrank as he abruptly opened his mouth and roared, Scarlet Dragon Breath. Rumble. Scarlet red Genesis Chi spouted out like a dragon's breath, so searingly hot that the ground instantly melted. It was likely that anyone below the third layer Alpha origin would be instantly killed by it. Zhu Yuan's expression involuntarily changed. The saint rune quickly flickered in his eyes, faint light dots appearing on the incoming scarlet red dragon breath. They were vulnerabilities. However, even if he could see them, Zhu Yuan did not have enough power to neutralize the attack. My power is insufficient. Zhu Yuan pursed his lips, his eyes falling deep into thought. Zhu Yuan, you're dead. Everyone inside and outside the Saint Remains domain sighed in pity when they saw this scene. The tumultuous battle was finally about to end. Mu Wuji's expression turned ugly, his hands tightly clenched as he muttered, just admit defeat, you stupid kid. The most important thing now is to preserve your life. However, Zhu Yuan could not hear these words, and even if he did, he would not make such a decision. Zhu Yuan's body lowered slightly. In the next instant, the ground below his feet shattered as he swiftly shot forth, heading straight for the scarlet red dragon breath. Zhu Yuan's actions caused countless people to gasp as they muttered to themselves, Zhu Yuan has really gone insane. Mu Wuji could not help but bellow, fool. The current Wu Huang was not something Zhu Yuan could defeat. In fact, the dragon breath was even more terrible than Heaven Genesis technique earlier. The cold, cruel smile that hung from the corners of Wu Huang's lips grew even icier. Come on, dying to the sacred dragon blessing that originally belonged to you is the best ending you could ever wish for. Under the attention of countless watching gazes, Zhu Yuan appeared in front of the dragon breath in a few breaths. The scorching heat surged towards him, causing a piercing pain to pulse from his skin. Zhu Yuan lifted his head slightly, peering past the scarlet-red Genesis Chi to see Wu Huang's cruel eyes and ice-cold face. Wu Huang. His hand made a slight grabbing motion, and a silver ball suddenly appeared within. The moment it appeared, it melted into liquid that swiftly spread along Zhu Yuan's arm. Silver light blossomed for an instant, and Zhu Yuan's figure slammed into the dragon breath under the crowd's stares. It's time for this battle to end. At the moment of impact, it seemed as if Zhu Yuan's faint voice stealthily rang out. The scarlet-red dragon breath unfurled, barging through the white jade plaza as it left behind a long black scar, and melted white jade wherever it passed. The dragon breath had completely engulfed Zhu Yuan. Everyone both inside and outside of the Saint Remains domain fell silent, before bursting out into numerous regretful sighs. Zhu Yuan was really too foolish. It was unbelievable for him to meet that attack head-on. The young are always so foolhardy. If only he had chosen to yield this one time and wait for another chance in the future. Once you lose your life, there will be no more chances for you. To have pushed Wu Huang so far is actually already be a victory for him. Everyone shook their heads. Mu Wuji tightly gripped his pipe, wishing that Zhu Yuan could have been more level-headed as he said through gritted teeth, "Stupid kid, what the hell were you thinking?" He was truly unable to understand why Zhu Yuan had rushed to his death. Such actions were foolish beyond reason. Where had all the brilliance he had previously displayed gone to? And now, everything was over. On the other hand, Zhao Pan breathed a heavy sigh of relief as if every burden had been lifted from his shoulders. He shot a sideways glance at Mu Wuji and snidely said, "What a pity, looks like that brat won't have the fortune of entering your Zhangshuan sect." The corners of Mu Wuji's mouth twitched as he shot Zhao Pan a venomous glare. Zhao Pan showed no fear, all smiles as he continued to speak. "Don't be too heartbroken, brother Wuji, even if he did enter the Zhangshuan sect, he will only bring it shame. At least he had a clean death here. You?" Mu Wuji's eyes boiled with rage, as the boundless Genesis Chi around his body began to soar into the sky, rippling the clouds above. Zhao Pan grinned nastily. "Does brother Wuji wish to exchange pointers with me here?" The moment his voice faded, similarly majestic Genesis Chi whizzed out, giving off powerful Genesis Chi undulations. Although they stood facing each other, ready to fight, neither party attacked in the end. Each gave the other a vicious glare before gradually withdrawing their Genesis Chi. Both clearly understood that this was neither the place nor time. All of a sudden, one of the envoy's eyes concentrated slightly as he said with some hesitation, "There seems to be something strange inside." Mu Wuji, Zhao Pan and the rest immediately cast their gazes towards the white jade plaza. A split second later, their pupils abruptly shrank. They seemed to have caught sight of a flash of silver within the scarlet-red dragon breath. On the white jade plaza, Wu Huang's maniacal laughter continued to echo. His eyes were scarlet-red as he gazed at the destruction wreaked by the dragon breath, while the smile on lips grew increasingly chilling and eerie. "Zhu Yuan, you've lost. Tragic and pitiful worm, you were already a failure when you were born, and now you're still that same failure. You should know by now just who the true dragon is, right? Ha ha, don't worry. I promise that I will hang your corpse on my banner when I crush your great Zhu empire. I want to let everyone know how useless the so-called sacred dragon is." Wu Huang lifted his head and gazed at the sky as a beautiful figure surfaced in his mind. The proud and noble figure had been branded into his heart, never to be removed. "Do you see this, Wu Yao? I've said before that I will prove to you that I am the true dragon. No matter how great your blessings, I believe that I will eventually catch up to you. In this world, only you and I are a perfect fit." A sick, crazed look flitted across Wu Huang's eyes, before he closed them in a somewhat intoxicated manner, and took in a deep breath. "Is that so?" At this moment, a low voice stealthily sounded. Wu Huang's eyes abruptly opened, alarm and doubt within them as he looked towards the scarlet-red dragon breath that was still traveling across the white jade plaza. Next, his pupils suddenly shrank, as he saw a flash of silver light shoot out from the dragon breath. When it passed by, even the dragon breath was forcefully ripped open. The crazed smile on Wu Huang's face froze as he cried out in horror, "What? No. Impossible. How can you be alive? Howled Wu Huang in disbelief. His heart was akin to a churning sea, filled with terror and astonishment. Never in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that Zhu Yuan would actually survive the dragon breath. Countless gazes both inside and outside of the Saint Remains domain blankly stared at the silver light, as they rapidly swallowed their saliva. Mu Wuji was also dazed. A brief moment later, he pinched his face and mumbled, "Why are the younger generation now all so fierce beyond reason? Blasted, they're clearly just a mere Heaven Gate practitioner, and an Alpha Origin practitioner. Why is their battle even more intense than one between divine dwelling experts? My heart can't take it anymore." Under the countless dazed looks, the silver figure swept past, tearing through the scarlet-red dragon breath. In the blink of an eye, it pierced through completely. Only then did everyone finally get a clear view. The silver figure was a person clothed in silver armor. The flickering ancient patterns that decorated it gave off a mystical aura, while extremely powerful Genesis chi undulations violently pulsed from the armor. Although the silver armor also covered the figure's face, everyone knew that it was Zhu Yuan. An ice-cold gaze seemed to shoot out from the silver armor, landing on Wu Huang's frozen face. Silver liquid flowed down the armor, clearly an aftereffect of passing through the dragon breath. Without a pause, the silver armor transformed into a flash of silver light that headed straight for Wu Huang. "Zhu Yuan. You really are like an unbanishable spirit. Die." Wu Huang finally returned to his senses and furiously roared. His hands came together as scarlet-red Genesis chi transformed into a 100-feet wide wall that stood before him with the intention of stopping Zhu Yuan. However, Zhu Yuan's figure did not stop, straight like a pencil as he shot forward. 5 fingers tightly clenched into a fist that ruthlessly punched at the fire wall. Bang! A shockwave of destruction instantly blew apart the wall of flames. After activating Silver Shadow, Zhu Yuan's strength had risen dramatically, now so high that it no longer lost to the draconized Wu Huang. Adding in the Saint Rune's ability to detect vulnerabilities, Wu Huang's defenses were practically non-existent before Zhu Yuan. "Impossible. Impossible," howled Wu Huang as his figure rapidly retreated while frantically sending blast after blast of Genesis chi at Zhu Yuan. Bang! Bang! However, the silver figure dashed through like hot butter through knife, each blast of Genesis chi blowing apart one after another. In the short span of several breaths, every single one of Wu Huang's attacks had been neutralized. Silver light appeared in front of Wu Huang, the two individuals now a mere few feet from each other. Their gazes met in the air, both a sea of blood red, both filled with cruelness and ferocity. Wu Huang roared, "Die Zhu Yuan." Another burst of Genesis chi exploded from his body. This time, however, Zhu Yuan did not give the former any chance to attack. In a single step, he appeared beside Wu Huang. "Wu Huang, I will take back everything your Wu clan has stolen from me. And now, you shall be the first." There was no emotion whatsoever in the ice-cold voice that softly sounded by Wu Huang's ear. Wu Huang's pupils violently shrank. Under the countless watching gazes, Zhu Yuan and Wu Huang's figures crossed each other. The entire world seemed to go into slow-mo at this moment. On the white jade plaza, even the sound of wind seemed to slow to a crawl. Countless gazes had their full focus on the two figures that had crossed. Zhu Yuan and Wu Huang were now back to back. The bright silver light on Zhu Yuan's body began to dim, transforming into silver liquid that flowed down, ultimately becoming a silver ball as it floated by his side. Once the silver armor was off, Zhu Yuan could not help but vomit a mouthful of blood. Intense pain pulsed from between his brows, nearly causing him to lose consciousness. However, he forced himself to endure it while the spirit between his brows rapidly dimmed. Fortunately, the Saint Spirit crystal began to emanate rays of light that wrapped around his spirit. Strands of cooling aura poured into his spirit, allowing him to maintain his final shred of consciousness. The sight of those caused the onlookers both inside and outside the Saint Remains domain to cry out in alarm. Zhu Yuan seems to be seriously injured. Anyone could sense that Zhu Yuan's Genesis chi was also swiftly weakening, undoubtedly a sign that he would no longer be able to fight. Mu Wuji, Zhao Pan and the other 4 envoys watched closely, not daring to blink. Under their watching eyes, Zhu Yuan feebly wiped away the blood at the corner of his mouth. His usage of Silver Shadow had been very brief this time, which was why Zhu Yuan had not directly lost consciousness like before. Even so, Zhu Yuan could feel that his spirit had become extremely weak. He did indeed no longer possess the strength to do battle. However, no panic appeared on his face. He lowered his head to look at his hand, seeing fresh blood drip from his fingertips, but it did not belong to him. Zhu Yuan declared in an indifferent voice, "Wu Huang, you all will never be able to take what's truly mine." Back still facing each other, Wu Huang's hoarse voice was transmitted over, "How can this be? How can I lose to trash like you? It's not fair." His howls were filled with indignation. "You were too prideful," replied Zhu Yuan. Wu Huang's expression twisted as he recalled the words Wu Yao once said to him when he left the great Wu royal palace. "Wu Huang, there will eventually come a day where you will lose because of your pride and arrogance." The him from back then had laughed at these words, because he had never felt that the crippled dragon Zhu Yuan was even worthy enough to enter his eyes. He saw the latter as an ant that could easily be swatted away into the endless abyss with a simple flip of his hand. However, he would never have imagined the things that had happened today. The once ant-like existence in his eyes had destroyed all of his trump cards. The pride he once had began to vanish completely at this moment. "I won't accept," mumbled Wu Huang. Squirch. A line of blood slowly appeared on his neck. In the next instant, Wu Huang's head fell from his body. Blood dashed into the sky. The entire Saint Remains domain and the area outside was completely silent, before countless gasps sounded. Wu Huang has been killed. Gaze after gaze stared at this scene in shock. No one had expected the unfathomably powerful Wu Huang would be killed by a Heaven Gate stage youth. Mu Wuji's mouth hung wide open, the pipe in his hand shaking as he mumbled, "This kid, how the heck did he do it?" Moments ago, he had been certain that Zhu Yuan was dead. But who could have expected him to suddenly break through Wu Huang's terrifying attack, almost instantaneously reversing the situation, and then taking his head? "How can this be?" Zhao Pao also roared. His abruptly stood up with a stormy expression, chillingly staring at the mirror with eyes filled with disbelief. He was likewise unable to accept that Wu Huang had lost to Zhu Yuan. The entire place was plagued by an endless uproar. However, no matter how much they did not believe it, the scenes in the mirror made them understand how cruel reality was. In the Saint Remains domain, Xiao Qianxian and Ji Yuling were dumbstruck when they saw this scene. Moments later, they swallowed a mouthful of saliva. When they looked towards Zhu Yuan's figure again, there now some fear in their eyes. They clearly knew how powerful Wu Huang was, and yet, even someone as unreasonably strong as him had lost at Zhu Yuan's hands. Meanwhile, rays of light suddenly exploded from the 5th to 9th stone platforms along the stone stairs. The light gradually weakened as the situation within the 5 stone platforms was clearly revealed. On the 5th stone platform, Luluo was seated on the ground, her small face rather pale. Little frost feebly lay on her shoulder, the glow around it now pretty dim. Some distance to her front, a lifelike ice statue glittered under the sunshine. Inside it, Zhu Ying's face was frozen, never to move again. On the 6th stone platform, Zhenshu's clothes were torn and tattered, countless deep blade cuts all over his body. However, no blood flowed from his wounds, his body akin to a dried corpse. Before him, Jiang Quan was also covered in wounds, one of them however, had pierced the spot between his brows. On the 7th stone platform, Zhuo Qiuqingyu's fair feet stood on the shoulders of a muscular metal tower-like figure. Blood could be seen at the corner of her mouth, making her red lips even more enchanting. The metal tower-like man below her feet called Qin Tong had one knee on the ground. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. On the 8th stone platform, or what was left of it, it was as if the entire platform had been blown apart. Ning Zhon climbed out from the rubble. His body was riddled with injuries, but the smile on his face was filled with wild excitement. One would faintly see white hair poking out from the rubble nearby. On the 9th stone platform, 2 figures were seated cross-legged. Bloody hole after hole could be seen on Blind Sword's body. His face was very pale, while the hand that grasped his black heavy sword trembled without end. Yi Ming was seated some distance to his front. However, a deep sword wound ran from his shoulder to his waist, practically splitting him into 2. Both individuals' injuries were a terrible sight to behold. It was a case of neither party winning due to serious injuries. Uproar. The sight of this caused an uproar to wash across the entire place once again, but it was soon followed by deafening cheers. With the exception of the 9th stone platform, every other fight seemed to have ended in the Kangman continent's victory. However, Luluo, Zhuo Qingyu and the rest were currently lifting their heads to look towards the peak of the Saint Mountain. Next, they saw the kneeling Zhu Yuan, a head falling behind him as blood spurted into the sky from Wu Huang's headless body. "What a freak!" mumbled Luluo. "To think that he was able to do it," said Jun Shu in a soft voice. Zhuo Qingyu's eyes shined. With a lovely laugh, she slyly said, "Looks like this guy is a pretty good option too." Ning Zhon stared at Zhu Yuan's figure with a solemn expression. "How formidable, I really want to go at it with him." Blind Sword Li Chunjun lightly grasped his heavy sword in silence for a while, before he spoke. "Zhu Yuan, it seems that you will a better grindstone for my sword than Wu Huang in the future." Yi Ming coughed out some blood as he shook his head and smiled. "He, Wu Huang are Wu Huang. I truly never expected that you will ultimately lose to him." Every gaze had converged onto the White Jade Plaza, where an exceptionally shocking scene was present. Under the lingering rays of the sun, a figure kneeled on one knee, while a head fell, blood spraying into the sky. On the ruins of what was once a White Jade Plaza, Zhu Yuan was kneeling on one knee. His expression was deathly pale, the Genesis chi around his body extremely weak, while the spirit between his brows was so dim that it seemed as if it was about to be extinguished. He gently turned his gaze, eyes indifferent as he looked towards the headless body behind him. All of a sudden, Wu Huang's headless corpse began to tremble faintly. A split second later, a flash of light dashed out from his stump of a neck, the roar of a dragon echoing within it. A faint translucent dragon silhouette was revealed within the light. The dragon silhouette was ancient and noble, like a gift from the heavens. Zhu Yuan's heart violently shook when he saw it. He could feel an extremely intimate and familiar aura from it. The sacred dragon blessing. There was a slight tremble in Zhu Yuan's voice. Back then, King Wu had extracted the sacred dragon blessing from his body and infused it into Great Wu's python and sparrow. He never imagined that a dozen years later, he would once again be able to feel the sacred dragon blessing that originally belonged to him. The omni-python chi in Zhu Yuan's chi dwelling began to stir violently. A hiss seemed to echo, filled with an indescribable thirst and desire. The translucent dragon silhouette coiled in mid-air for a moment, before suddenly sweeping downwards. However, it was not headed towards Zhu Yuan, but Wu Huang's decapitated head. "Wu Huang, I knew that you will not die so easily." Chilling light blossomed in Zhu Yuan's eyes, no hesitation whatsoever, as he immediately threw a punch. The tiny bit of Genesis chi that had just recovered in his body whizzed out, without reservation, ruthlessly blasting towards Wu Huang's head. At this moment, the head on the ground suddenly opened its eyes. Light appeared between its brows, revealing a faint illusory figure. It was Wu Huang's spirit. Zhu Yuan had slayed Wu Huang's physical body, but his spirit had hid itself between his brows. When the gazes both inside and outside Saint Remains saw this, they burst out in alarm. Wu Huang's spirit has not faded together with his body. It seems that he has a spirit protection treasure. That's how his spirit hid in his head. But the spirit is useless without a body unless it steps into the corporeal stage. However, Wu Huang's spirit was clearly far from that level. Zhu Yuan only needs to pulverize his head. His spirit will then have nowhere to hide, making it an easy target. Spirit power spread from the spot between his brows, lifting the head into the air and avoiding Zhu Yuan's attack. The head's mouth opened, attempting to suck away the sacred dragon blessing. Heavenly Yuan brush. Zhu Yuan drew the heavenly Yuan brush at his waist with ice-cold eyes. With a little shake, the brush began to grow, its snow-white hairs stretching into long snow-white whips that swiftly pierced towards Wu Huang's head. Wu Huang no longer dared to take back the sacred dragon blessing, quickly abandoning his previous actions. His head rose, avoiding the snow-white hairs. Wu Huang's head flew about, his mouth opening and closing as an eerie voice sounded. "Zhu Yuan, I was indeed too confident this time. However, it will not be so easy for you to kill me." Zhu Yuan's eyes narrowed slightly and suddenly grabbed with his hand. Hairs that could not be seen with the naked eye suddenly appeared out of nowhere, quickly surrounding Wu Huang's head. In the next moment, all of them shot towards their target, piercing Wu Huang's head. Bang! As the hairs swept past, Wu Huang's head burst into pieces. Though the head was destroyed, Zhu Yuan frowned slightly. He had caught sight of a palm-sized illusory figure rising from the mist of blood. That spirit naturally belonged to Wu Huang. However, there was a layer of glittering star light wrapped around Wu Huang's illusory spirit like a set of clothes. It was the protection of this star clothes that allowed Wu Huang's mid-illusory stage spirit to separate from his body. Spirit armor. Zhu Yuan's pupils shrank. The star clothes was a kind of spirit armor that could protect one's spirit. Even normal corporeal stage spirit cultivators were unable to create one. It was obvious that Wu Huang had a very powerful backer. Wu Huang's spirit looked over and coldly said, "Zhu Yuan, I said that you can't kill me. Humph, want to take back the sacred dragon blessing? Dream on. It has been in my body for over a dozen years, making my control over it greater than yours. Once I take it back, there will naturally be a chance for revenge in the future." Wu Huang's hands quickly formed a seal, and the sacred dragon blessing began to tremble. In the end, it began to flow towards Wu Huang's spirit. Zhu Yuan's eyes were ice cold. It had not been easy for him to find an opportunity to slay Wu Huang's physical body and draw out the sacred dragon blessing within. If he allowed Wu Huang to retrieve it, Zhu Yuan did not know how long he would have to wait for another chance like this would come by. In addition, even if he ended up being unable to completely destroy Wu Huang today, losing the sacred dragon blessing would be an unimaginably huge blow to the latter. Therefore, Zhu Yuan absolutely could not allow Wu Huang to succeed. Zhu Yuan took in a deep breath and gave the heavenly Yuan brush a little jerk. Its snow-white hairs flew under his feet, lifting him into the air and making a beeline for the sacred dragon blessing. "Stop dreaming, Zhu Yuan. You cannot take away this sacred dragon blessing." Wu Huang's spirit laughed loudly. An icy light flitted across Zhu Yuan's eyes. "Is that so?" He slowly lifted his right hand where a lump of blood red slowly squirmed on his palm, giving off an aura of resentment. Zhu Yuan asked in a low voice, "Dragon's resentment poison, do you recall the reason for your existence? Don't you want to take back this sacred dragon blessing?" The dragon's resentment poison had a mind of its own. Ever since the sacred dragon blessing's appearance, Zhu Yuan had felt it stirring impatiently. Roar! The moment Zhu Yuan's words faded, the lump of blood red abruptly began to shudder. It pierced out of Zhu Yuan's palm, blood red qi surging forth, transforming into a blood red dragon head in front of his hand. The dragon head roared and ferociously sucked. Wu Huang was immediately shocked and terrified by this. The sacred dragon blessing that had originally been flowing towards him was now surging towards Zhu Yuan at an astonishing speed. "God damn it!" howled Wu Huang, as he hurriedly used all his might to frantically suck up the sacred dragon blessing in an attempt to regain it. Thus, the sacred dragon blessing split in the air, surging towards two different directions. But, the dragon's resentment poison was clearly much faster. In the short span of several dozen breaths, the sacred dragon blessing had disappeared. Nearly 2/3 of it had been swallowed by the dragon's resentment poison. Wu Huang was only able to get back a third. Wu Huang completely lost it this time, his eyes entirely red. He had not acted in such a manner even when his physical body was slain earlier, all because he clearly understood the functions of the sacred dragon blessing. As long as he possessed it, it would only be a matter of time before he rose again. But a large portion of the sacred dragon blessing had now been taken back by Zhu Yuan. This would affect not only himself, but also the country blessing of the Great Wu Empire. However, there was nothing he could do no matter how angry he got. The only thing left of him was his spirit, and it would not be easy for him to escape from Zhu Yuan, let alone trying to do anything to the latter. Dazzling star light exploded from Wu Huang's spirit, sweeping him up as it soared into the sky, before disappearing as if penetrating through space itself. "Zhu Yuan, I will never let you off." As Wu Huang's spirit disappeared, his mad howls continued to echo. Outside the Saint Remains domain, Zhao Pan's expression was dark and stormy as he retrieved a star disk from his clothes. Starlight shined from it, gathering in front of him to ultimately form a spatial passageway. A flash of starlight shot out from within, landing on the star disk together with Wu Huang's spirit. Zhao Pan was evidently the one who had saved Wu Huang's spirit. Nearby, Mu Wuji sneered and said, "Heh, I never imagined that you would have even brought the Sacred Palace's star spirit disk. Could you guys have predicted Wu Huang's loss?" Zhao Pan's expression was white with anger, but he ignored the former and instead shot a cold glance at the spirit in the star disk as he scolded in his heart, "What a useless piece of trash. If not for Palace Master, I would not have saved you." Although he was furious at Wu Huang's uselessness, he still carefully kept the star disk, allowing Wu Huang's spirit to recover within it. After all, before leaving Sacred Palace, Palace Master had personally tasked him to bring Wu Huang back even if all that was left was a tiny wisp of his spirit. Zhao Pan had initially scoffed at such a notion, but who could have imagined that Wu Huang's physical body would be slain, only escaping with his spirit. Zhao Pan raised his head and looked towards Zhu Yuan's figure in the mirror, as killing intent involuntarily flitted across his eyes. Can't believe that this brat was able to go so far. But he knew that with Mu Wuji watching, there was nothing he could do to Zhu Yuan. Zhu Yuan had undoubtedly become the greatest winner in the Saint Remains domain. On the White Jade Plaza, Zhu Yuan calmly gazed at the spot where Wu Huang's spirit had disappeared as his body slowly descended. Wu Huang's escape was a little out of his expectations. Fortunately, 2/3 of the sacred dragon blessing in Wu Huang's body had been forcibly wrestled away by the dragon's resentment poison and him. Losing the majority of the sacred dragon blessing would undoubtedly be a huge blow to Wu Huang, leaving many negative repercussions. Years ago, when King Wu extracted the sacred dragon blessing in his body, it had been split into 3. Great Wu's Python and Sparrow were each bestowed one portion, while the final one was turned into the country blessing of the Great Wu Empire. At this current point in time, Zhu Yuan had only managed to take back a small portion. Zhu Yuan raised his hand and looked at the blood-red lump of qi on his palm that gave off a heavy aura of resentment. The dragon's resentment poison. After absorbing 2/3 of Wu Huang's sacred dragon blessing, it seemed to have grown even more intense, while its form was gradually turning from the initial lump of blood-colored mist to a faint mini blood dragon silhouette. The dragon's resentment poison has grown stronger. Zhu Yuan could sense that it had become even more tyrannical, making him somewhat worried. The poison may be a deadly weapon at times, but at others, it was only a source of fear. After all, it had tortured and tormented Zhu Yuan to no end during the past dozen or so years. You and I share the same body. That sacred dragon blessing cannot be enjoyed by you alone. The moment his voice fell, the omnipython chi in his chi dwelling began to circulate. A faint hiss was heard as the dark gold Genesis chi took on the shape of a python. It opened its mouth, emitting a peculiar suction force. As suction force reached out, the dragon's resentment poison on his palm began to shudder, releasing a low dragon's roar. Wisp after wisp of sacred dragon blessing left the dragon's resentment poison and surfed into the omnipython chi. The dragon's resentment poison roared, as if trying to resist. However, its resistance barely had any effect. Zhu Yuan could not possibly sit by and watch as it devoured the sacred dragon blessing and strengthened itself, turning into a huge problem in the future. Moreover, the sacred dragon blessing was clearly extremely beneficial to his omnipython chi. Sliver after sliver of scared dragon blessing was continuously absorbed by the omnipython chi. Zhu Yuan detected a change in the omnipython chi, its dark gold luster turning a little brighter. In addition, its grade was also steadily rising. Zhu Yuan's eyes glimmered. As expected, the sacred dragon blessing was akin to a huge booster for the omnipython chi. According to his estimates, at this rate, the omnipython chi would definitely rise from grade 5 to 6. Although it was only an upgrade of a single grade, Zhu Yuan clearly understood just how big of a difference it would make. Grade 6 Genesis Chi. Even the great empires of the Kangmang continent did not possess such a thing. It's a pity that Wu Huang was still able to take away some of it, or the omnipython Chi may have been able to evolve, becoming the grade 7 world-subduing heavenly serpent Chi. Zhu Yuan felt some regret. The sacred dragon blessing he obtained today could at most raise his omnipython chi by a single grade, and was not enough for it to evolve to the grade 7 level. However, he was not someone who would be overly fixated on the sacred dragon blessing. In fact, it was already out of his expectations to take back a portion of the sacred dragon blessing today. As for Wu Huang, it would not be so easy for him to recover from such a serious blow. Sacred dragon blessing. Zhu Yuan's 5 fingers slowly clenched into a fist. He took in a deep breath as his gaze turned ice cold. I will sooner or later take all of it back. He calmed his surging emotions, allowing the omnipython chi to continue absorbing the sacred dragon blessing from the dragon's resentment poison, before he raised his head and looked towards the depths of the White Jade Plaza. The mists there suddenly dissipated, revealing a little stone path. Zhu Yuan fell into thought for a brief moment, before lifting his leg, walking towards the little stone path. He wanted to see exactly what kind of blessing he could obtain after all the painstaking effort it had taken to come all the way here. The Great Wu Empire. In a great hall where numerous officials discussed matters of the state. A figure in dragon robes was seated on the king's seat. A powerful aura of dignity spread from his body, giving rise to respect in anyone who felt it. Genesis Chi faintly converged above his head, seemingly forming a cloud for which Genesis Chi light shines down. He was a middle-aged man with a stern and dignified face. Those eyes, however, were somewhat sunken, making him appear extremely cold. This individual was the king of the Great Wu Empire, King Wu. At this current moment, his eyes were slightly closed as he listened to the reports of his ministers. All of a sudden, Kind Wu's eyes opened and looked outside the great hall. The roar of a dragon suddenly sounded in the sky above the royal palace, as the Genesis Chi in the area began to descend into chaos. The land shook as disorder began washing over the royal palace. King Wu's expression immediately turned rather grim and stormy. Light surfaced in his eyes as he looked towards the sky outside the palace, which was originally occupied by the presences of a dragon and phoenix. These two presences swirled around the royal palace and represented the country blessing of the Great Wu Empire. At this current moment, the phoenix QI was still present, but the dragon QI was rapidly dimming at an alarming speed. Some dragon chi has been lost. King Wu abruptly stood up, his expression changing drastically as he said in disbelief, "Something has happened to Huanga." The Genesis Chi of the land shifting towards the east. The east, that's towards the Great Zhou Empire. The expression in King Wu's eyes turned extremely terrifying. "Well done, Great Zhou Empire, looks like you can't even die in peace." Although he did know exactly what had happened, the country blessing they lost had clearly moved towards the Great Zhou Empire, causing the Genesis Chi of the land to shift towards the east. He suddenly looked towards his officials and sternly commanded, "Quick, immediately send men to the Saint Remain's domain and find the Crown Prince. They must ensure his safety." The Great Zhou Empire. In the royal palace, Zhu Qing was accompanying Qin Yu for a stroll in the flower park. His footsteps suddenly paused, somewhat bewildered as he lifted his head in uncertainty. Genesis Chi surged in his eyes, and he immediately saw a peculiar presence appear out of nowhere with a sudden surge of Qi. The presence flew about for a moment before making itself comfortable, taking on the shape of a dragon. At this moment, the Genesis Chi in the entire Great Zhou Empire seemed to become a little more lively and robust. Zhu Qing was stunned and involuntarily cried out, This is a country blessing." Back in its golden age, the Great Zhou Empire naturally possessed a country blessing. It was only later on after the Wu clan's rebellion, when the Great Zhou Empire had weakened, that its country blessing dissipated substantially, the tiny bit left bitterly persevering. Who could have imagined that it would appear again today? Zhu Qing blankly stared at this scene. Moments later, his eyes reddened as he said in a trembling voice, "It's Yuana. Yuana must have taken back the sacred dragon blessing. Yuana was headed for the Saint Remain's domain. He must have encountered Wu Huang and taken back a portion of the sacred dragon blessing from him." Zhu Qing was quickly able to make some conjectures. Still a little in disbelief, he grabbed Qin Yu's hand and excitedly said, "Yuana must have defeated Wu Huang. Is that true?" Qin Yu also found this unbelievable, but was so overjoyed that tears began gathering in her eyes. She had been worrying about Zhu Yuan ever since he had left. After all, only the elite geniuses journeyed to the Saint Remain's domain, and Zhu Yuan was undoubtedly lacking somewhat compared to them. However, she had just heard that he had defeated Wu Huang. Zhu Qing forcefully nodded his head. Or else the country guardian dragon, Qi, would not possibly appear in the Great Zhou Empire. He could not help but laugh heartily, those usually tiger-like eyes now flooding with uncontrollable tears. "Excellent. Excellent. Let's see who still dares to say our Yuana is the crippled dragon of the Zhou clan." For the past few years, he had been under tremendous pressure from King Wu and the Great Wu Empire. He had painstakingly tried to hold the Great Zhou Empire together, but each day was filled with darkness, not the slightest ray of hope to be seen. In addition, Zhu Qing's failure to protect Zhu Yuan and allow such a calamity to befall him at his birth was something Zhu Qing deeply reproached himself for. All till now. He raised his head and looked towards the direction of the Great Wu Empire, as if seeing King Wu's enraged appearance. "King Wu, you believed that taking my son's sacred dragon blessing would plummet him into an endless abyss. You believed that you had already won, right? However, it seems that you still haven't won completely. And my Great Zhou has not lost completely either." An old, ancient hall sat on a certain mountain peak, mist swirling around it. In a pavilion within, a young lady in purple opened her long and narrow eyes. Her beautiful face was peculiarly bewitching, the potential to charm anyone already visible even at such a young age. Especially her presence, noble and mysterious like a phoenix. This was clearly the great Wu Empire's Wu Yao. She had just moments ago faintly felt that something had happened. The young lady indifferently muttered to herself, Wu Huang. I told you that you will sooner or later lose due to your pride and arrogance. She was Wu Huang's twin, and had also obtained a portion of the sacred dragon blessing which naturally allowed her to sense the changes in it. Evidently, Wu Huang had lost. Moreover, he had lost to the so-called crippled dragon from the Great Zhou Empire. However, Wu Yao did not really feel anything towards Wu Huang's loss and the subsequent seizure of the sacred dragon blessing. Because she was a cold and aloof person. In addition, she could detect the abnormal love Wu Huang had towards her, something that she was not fond of at all. Zhu Yuan. She softly said his name. Soon after, a bewitching smile rose from the corners of her red lips as she softly said, It seems that you truly are that sacred dragon. Even after falling into a dark abyss, you still managed to crawl back out. Her gaze lifted slightly, as if piercing through space to see a certain figure in Sangshuan heaven. I know that you want to take back all of the sacred dragon blessing, right? What a coincidence. The truth is that I too plan on enjoying the blessing alone. Wu Yao's slender fingers gently lifted the fine black hair that hung over her cheek, her dignified-looking eyes slowly closing as a faint voice seemed to sound. Zhu Yuan, keep on growing even stronger, because the day we eventually meet will be the day I devour you. You should take care. After all, I am not an idiot like Wu Huang. Hee hee. This video will end here.